Hello, and welcome back. Hope you guys all had wonderful holidays. They really just came and went so fast and kind of swallowed everything up. And we're now recovering. We're recovering just like from the messes in the house, from doing everything, all the cooking and all the eating, and getting back to the new year. One thing I wanted to mention before we get started is, first I'm Jenny, and this is Paul.
Hello.
And we own Vine Go Artist Bar in Solwood, and then obviously the Go Box is part of our business as well. That's our monthly subscription box. And I believe in March I'm going to switch things up a little bit. And I know you guys all have been getting like the double canvas every month and the acrylic paint. And there's a lot of other art forms and projects that I love to do and I'd love to share with you guys. So I might just throw a wrench in the gears and send you some other projects once in a while that are not just canvas. And I've got a couple examples here if you want to zoom in on our little thing here, Paul.
Okay, just give me a second.
Working on it. So I've been doing a lot of watercolor. I like it because it's really easy to just get your kit out. All you need is water and a brush and your paper. And here we go. These are some examples. It's super non-committal. You can work on something for a while and then maybe your kid needs help with their homework. You can set it aside and come back to it at any time. I love these little projects, and like in particular, this one I was going to use as my personal Christmas card. It's kind of hard to see there. Got weird overexposed lighting, but it's got a little fox and an owl and snow. Super fun to do, really easy. And then I do a lot of woodland creatures. This is a little owl. And then Fizzgig, those of you who might be Dark Crystal fans. I was back in the day. You might recognize that little guy. So watercolor is coming up. And then the other thing, we really enjoy painting on these little ornaments, which are not Christmas ornaments. These are things that in my house, I hang these over our wine bottles. If I'm giving a wine bottle as a gift to someone, I will include it, or maybe a birthday gift, tie it to the gift bag, the present, that sort of thing. These are really fun. Obviously, I do love doing my little woodland creatures. They have glitter on them, like it has glitter in the eyes and on the feathers. And then I've got a landscape here with Multnomah Falls on the back. That's the nice thing. You can double side these things. And they're super fun to paint. I really enjoy working little like this. So I might throw some of those things in the box as we go along into 2020, just to give you guys some other projects, because I think that keeps you interested and engaged and gives you a little extra learning process along the way. So, the other one I wanted to show you with painting on wood, I have come to love that. Here's a cute one that I thought would be a really fun one to do in the box. And this is Mama Bear. So that's an idea as well. Painted on, this is a cool little birch panel. And here's what the backside looks like. I have some of these hanging in my house and I really love the way they look. And I love having the wood show in the background too. So, now that I got that out of the way, hopefully you guys are excited about that kind of thing. I know I posted on our GoBox Art Crate Facebook page about it, and the response was an overwhelming yes, let's do other projects, especially with a watercolor. So hopefully the rest of you guys will be into that as well.
So I just noticed that our live chat is not enabled for YouTube.
Oh!
So I've got two options. We can shut down the stream for 30 seconds to a minute, but that might be confusing. But I would say if you guys have any questions or anything, go over to the Facebook page.
Or just chat on our website.
The support group,
yeah.
or the website if you have a question. I think that would be a good thing to do, because it kind of messes around with things if I end the live stream and then pick it back up.
I think that would be really not a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, so hopefully you all have your canvases out. I hope that you are making sure to take some time for yourselves.
Absolutely.
It's so important to do, and it's really therapeutic. And I know sometimes it's hard with, you've got kids and you're taking them to sports, you're helping them with homework, you're getting them fed and off to bed and all that. Or even just having pets is a lot of hard work. Or even just having a spouse can be a lot of work too. But it really is important to make sure that you take some time to let your left brain have a little rest, and let your right brain really get engaged in some art. It's super relaxing. You'll feel really good afterwards. It's the cheapest therapy out there. we highly recommend it.
Even if you're only taking like maybe breaking it up into 4 sessions of a half an hour. Half an hour is almost not enough time to really get rolling on something, but an hour at a time, it's better than saying, oh, I don't have 2 hours to do this right now.
Yeah, and so maybe some of our projects could be a little shorter too. I think that would maybe make it easier for you guys to get started, to say, oh, yeah, here's a half hour. I can do that. I can start with a half hour. Baby steps.
Baby steps.
So we'll work on that.
Let's take some baby steps right now.
Let's take some baby steps. So let's look at our paint colors. This month you have Phthalo Blue. That seems to be a recurring color. Bright Red, White, Bahama Blue, again a recurring color. Our Craft Yellow, and Black. Now I put a lot of paint on here on this palette just because Paul and I are sharing. So you don't need that much for this painting we're doing. And then I've got my instruction sheet, so we can do the step-by-step, and it's double-sided, and it shows the finished product here on the end. And then here is the painting we're doing today. It's called Mountain Oasis, and I have been waiting for a while to run this one. I think I designed it back in like August, and we just, the holidays came up, and we were doing a lot of holiday theme paintings, so I'm pretty excited to get back into just, scenery and that sort of thing that are not related to the holidays. The holidays are so much fun. So today we're going to paint this one. We're going to start with just the background, and then as we just slowly add things and build it out until it is done. I know it looks like it might be a complicated painting, but I don't feel like it really was. Probably the most complicated thing might be clouds, but I'll teach you through those and how to do them and all that. So let's do a toast. We're going to toast to taking time for ourselves and good old Mondays that roll up every once in a while.
Once a week, amazing.
Once a week, yeah. So cheers to that.
Cheers.
Cheers to painting. Next Monday we'll be on the air again for Tropical Getaway, which is kind of our way of traveling to Hawaii via the painting world.
There you go.
So we'll do that. Okay.
All right.
So I've got my brush trio here that I use every week, or every month, I'm sorry. Every week. Well, eventually we'll get to that point. I've got my largest brush, which is a 1-inch flat wash, and then my number 8 bright, so it's about a 1/4 inch wide and flat, and then the number 4 round. These are Simply Simmons brushes. You can buy the bundle from gobox.com for $12, or you can pick them up at Michael's if you can find them there. So let's start with our, actually we're going to start with our number 8 brush, our middle size. Because we're going to do a little drawing here. We're going to draw a horizon line and a little river. So what we're going to do, let's dip this in the water first. Dry it on your towel so it's just a little bit damp. And I want you guys to mix a little red and white until you get a color that kind of looks like when you are making a smoothie and you add raspberries. Or maybe like raspberry sherbet actually is very... That's probably the right color name. I'm going to make enough for both Paul and I to share.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So yours, again, like I always say, it can be a little darker or a little lighter than mine. It doesn't make it wrong in any way.
Especially on this part, which is really just it's kind of a layout sketch part, so it's not that vital that it be anything exact.
Yep. Okay, so I'm already getting paint on here. Look at that.
Wow.
So our horizon line on this painting is about 1/3 of the way up from the bottom. So if I were to divide this canvas into 3 equal stripes, I'm going to just eyeball it. I'm going to go straight across here, straight-ish. It doesn't have to be exact because this all gets covered up. We put trees and all kinds of things. And then for the river itself, it is a little narrower back here and then wider down at the bottom. So up here, I'm going to have it be about 1 inch wide, which is the exact width of your biggest brush. So figure out where you want it to start. I try not to dead center things, so I'm going to move it a little bit off to the right. And I'll just do 2 little marks here. So there I've got about 1 inch wide. You don't have to do it that way. You can actually just draw it on if you want. I was just showing a little idea you can do. And then this is going to wander off and come down here on one side. And the other side's going to parallel it for a while, and then it's just going to get a little wider out here. So it'll be narrower back here, wider here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. parallel it, and then now quite a bit wider, goes off right at the corner or just above the corner. Got a hair attached to my brush there. The cool thing is you can reshape this like crazy. You're not ever fully committed to this exact shape you drew. Let's say, oh, maybe I want it to curve more this way. It's real easy to fix. So I'm going to wash my brush now. Oh, you did a nice long river. The river runs through it. And, oops, I didn't get that very clean. And then I'm going to use my biggest brush now. We're going to use the biggest brush from here on out for a while. And then eventually, as we get into the detail work, we'll start switching to those smaller brushes. So I'm going to take the color, the big brush, I got it wet and I dried it off. And I'm going to use that pink color we just made. I'm going to sweep up from this side, working up a little bit higher on this side. So maybe on this side it's probably about 1 inch wide, so about like that. But as I work up here, it's going to go higher up in the sky. Go right down to the base. You can wrap the color around the sides as you go, if you want, or you can do that later. Maybe pick a neutral color that's in the painting a lot and color the whole sides. Like I think the phthalo blue mixed with red makes a really pretty violet. That would be a good one to use. Or as you go, you can just take this color around the edges. So I'm just sort of feathering this up into the white part of the canvas. And then I'll sweep back and forth using long brush strokes so that I don't get a lot of choppy stop and start marks on the canvas. Every time that we add a color in the sky, it's going to be reflected down in the water. So you can switch down to your number 8 if you want, especially if you have a really narrow river back here. These brush strokes you want to keep as perfectly horizontal as you can, because the water is going to sit flat. A lot of times it's tempting to want to make kind of curved brush strokes for filling stuff in, but they really do need to be pretty horizontal. And you can extend out into these white areas because they get covered with black, like a greenish color and black later, so don't worry about that. You can just paint right out in there. This is where you can reshape your little river if you want to. So I just came down a couple inches here. You can even make it, doesn't have to be perfectly striped even. I could come down a little bit on one side more than the other. Now what I want to do is I want to blend in some yellow into the sky, and that's going to turn orange, kind of an orangey color when you paint on top of this. So I've got the pink on my brush. I'm not going to wash it. I'll just grab a little yellow so you can see how it's turned the yellow a little orangey. I'm going to overlap this wet paint and come up higher on the canvas. So it turns this really vibrant Mai Tai color. Isn't that what color they were, Mai Tais were?
Yeah, they're a little bit.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Maybe it's more tequila sunrise.
I know where your brain's at tonight.
Yeah, I was remembering that a year ago our plane landed in Hawaii today. Thank you, Facebook, for sending those great memories. So yeah, I guess I'm mentally there. So I just am, again, going a little higher on this one side. You can brush this down into the pink as far as you want to go, because what that'll do, it'll force blend them together. So then you end up with a nice little gradient where it smoothly goes from pink to orange. And I want to also add this to the river. I'll switch down to my littler brush, number 8. So again, just overlap your wet pink paint and bring this down a bit. Keeping your brush strokes nice and horizontal to suggest the water being flat. We've got a nice little calm river tonight in this painting. Nothing like what they've been experiencing at the Oregon coast the last couple days. It's been a little crazy, some of the pictures. Have you seen some of the pictures of the... I can't remember the name of it.
King tide?
King tide, yeah.
It's
crazy.
pretty crazy.
Okay, so what we're going to be doing next is we're going to be transitioning from this color into the turquoise Bahama blue, which can be it can go really bad. So what I've learned over the years teaching at Van Gogh is in order to make that transition to go from orange to blue, because what can happen is orange and blue together, they're going to turn kind of brownish, kind of greenish brown. It's not an attractive color that you would want in your sky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have us wash our brush. And we're going to put a swatch of white in here. We're going to overlap the wet orange paint with some white and bring it a little higher in the sky. And what that's going to do is that's going to aid our transition to blue a lot better. So it's going to turn it kind of pastel. So just white paint, overlap, come down a bit. This is where you're going to get a kind of sherbet color. Is it sherbet or sherbet?
It's sherbet.
Sherbet, okay.
Somebody will probably disagree with us, but there is no second R. I worked at Baskin Robbins, I know.
Years ago, you did. Okay, so make sure that you're smoothing everything out with nice long end-to-end brush strokes. So what we have here is raspberry smoothie going into Mai Tai, or tequila sunrise, going into peach smoothie, or peach sherbet. So it is kind of a peachy color up in here. I'm going to add a little more white because I had this spot of pink that I smeared on there earlier that'll help cover it up. And now I'm going to wash the brush again just to get any residual orange off. Your water looks like actually it's kind of a nice color.
What kind of alcoholic beverage does this remind you of?
Yeah, I was going to say I would paint my walls that color in the bathroom upstairs. I like that color. So now we want to mix Bahama blue, that's your turquoise here, and white, just to make a color that's a few shades lighter than Bahama blue, kind of that Aquafresh mint toothpaste color. We might need more white later. And I'm going to overlap this peach and bring it up. And let's go ahead and bring this all the way up. You'll brush down a little bit into the peach. It's okay if it turns kind of a funky color right through there. It's better because it's softened up. Let's bring this all the way up. Oh, I got a little darker Bahama blue in there on accident, but I actually do want the sky to gradually get darker, so feel free as you get up in here to just be using Bahama blue. Because we're going to paint some purple over it anyways. Oh, and I did what I thought I would do. I forgot to go back and add it in the water. That's okay. We need this to dry. And so we can work on the water while that's drying when you are ready. So down here we had the orangey color that I'm going to take a little white to transition. So it's turning it peach. Don't worry if you have lines from your river showing. Those will get covered up in due time. So now, I'm not even going to wash this brush because it really doesn't have much of any paint on it. I'm going to go right for my white, Aquafresh white and Bahama blue color.
It does seem like the paint's drying fast tonight. For me.
Yeah, maybe a little. So I'm just sort of brushing up a little bit to blend those two together. Go ahead and bring this Bahama blue all the way down to the bottom. I've got this black fuzz. There we go. So you can wash your brush anytime and go back and smooth out any of these. Like if you have a real stripe. Right here I have a definite stripe where it goes from light colored suddenly to the Bahama blue. So I'll take a little white maybe on the brush and sort of soften that out, the transition.
The other thing you can do with that, since it's water, is you can kind of do choppy little brush strokes that break up as you go in from one color to the next. And that kind of is a...
You can go back anytime too and touch up, like I'll remix a little of this orangey color, kind of give that another coat maybe. I saw some streakiness, a little bit of canvas showing through the background on mine. And that's partly because this little brush can't put a bunch of paint on the canvas because it's so small. Well, a little pink back up in here.
Bling, 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 bling. That was my glass.
So we've got another color I want to add in the sky. Let me bring this bad boy over here. So we have a darker blue to add in that transitions up to being more of a violet color. And we'll do that in just a minute. Let's all catch up. And I'll have you move along. And you can pause this anytime, even though it is a live feed. You can put us on pause, catch up if there's a spot you need to redo. I almost always will have a hair dryer in the room because I can dry something really fast and move right back to it, like cover something up. So feel free to do that. Pause us, use the hair dryer if needed. But I'm going to go ahead and move along now. I want to start adding the blue up in here. So I want to take a clean big brush. Dry it off. And I'm going to mix phthalo blue and Bahama blue. So I'll just pat some down up here. This makes a color, it's kind of periwinkle-ish. I don't want a lot of paint on the brush, so sometimes I'll just wipe it off on the palette somewhere or on your towel. And I'm going to start in this upper corner and work my way down. So maybe your Bahama blue through here is still a little bit wet. That would be nice, because then they'll sort of blend together a little better. If not, no biggie. You can always dip your brush in Bahama blue and streak some back on there. If you've got it space down here, let's add a little of that down in there. Just using my big brush since it's a wider area. And then lastly, I want this to turn sort of purple up in the corner. It's not like imperative that it does. That's what's on the original. Just a little purplish up in the upper corner, and that's where we put the stars later. So it does look pretty good. So what I'll do is I'll take this color, gonna add a little more phthalo blue to my periwinkle, and then I'll throw in a little red. So that's what's gonna turn it purple. You decide if you want it more of a red purple or more of a blue purple, just by how much of either of those colors you use. And again, I don't want a ton of paint on the brush. If you have a lot on the brush, either wipe it off on your towel or your palette, or wash your brush and start with a clean brush. Starting in the upper corner, brushing back and forth. It's gonna mix with that wet paint you just put on. And here's what I do. I just sort of let my brush run out of paint. I'm not pressing very hard. It's just like a loose, light glide back and forth as I get down in here. And then I've got a nice transition. I see a part here that I could touch up a little bit where the paint was kind of sticky and it's left a little bit of a stripe, and I can see some funny texture there. So I will wash my brush and dry it off. And I'm going to try first to just use a damp brush and sort of haze that in there, and that worked perfect. Real light pressure when I'm fixing that. There's no need to press hard. Actually, anytime throughout the painting, there's no reason to press hard. I think a lot of times that can be something that can make things a little difficult for you, is how hard you push.
If you have a dry brush and a lot of pressure, it tends to just lift the paint off the canvas.
Yep.
So.
And your camera just clicked off.
I already had it turned off, so we're good.
Okay. That looks good. You look like you have those clouds coming in here. We are going to paint clouds on there later on. Feel free to just add a little more at a time. You can only just do a little at a time. You don't need to, go crazy and work super fast. Put us on pause. Take a sip of whatever your liquid courage is, even if it's hot tea. That's what I've got here. Well, hot tea, and I do have a little seltzer, which is delicious. So if you've got room down here, you can put the dark color. I think I just put a little sliver of it on that original painting because we're kind of ran out of room. All right. We are going to get ready to paint a mountain range.
Yay.
Now, I didn't make this be Mount Hood, but because I grew up here in the Northwest, I tend to paint very Cascade Range looking mountains. And on your paper, you can see it without all these trees in place. You can see there's actually 3 mountains. There's a larger one in the middle, and then 2 like little support mountains on either side. So we're going to do that now, and the biggest one goes right. It's kind of lined up right with the top of the mouth of the river here, or wherever the river disappears off to. For drawing the mountains out, I like to use the number 8 brush for a little more control, and then I will fill them all in with the bigger brush. So color-wise, we're going to mix bright red, phthalo blue, so you get this dark violet. And I want to lighten that a bit, so I'm going to add some white to it. You could add Bahama blue. That will lighten it, but in the instructions I did have just white. Just going to look at my original here. Looks like my original is more of a blue purple than this one is. This is more of a reddish purple. So all I would do in that case is just put a little more blue in there. Maybe add a touch more white. And again, it really doesn't matter if it's the exact same shade as what's on the instructions in the original, or if it's slightly pinker or a little darker. It doesn't matter. I think with me, it's more like I'm always like challenging myself. Can I mix that exact color I did? I think I can. So that's close enough. I don't know, what would you call that color, Paul? It's obviously purple, but it's... Surely it has some kind of name. Plum?
No, I'm not sure exactly what
If it was in a box of crayons, what would it be called? Lavender Oasis.
I don't know. Drawn a blank.
Okay, so for the mountain range, I'm going to start with these little support ones on the side, just marking them off. I'm going to jump up from my horizon line about 1 inch to 1.5 inches and just make a dot. Let's do that on the other side too. Let's go maybe a little bit higher just to keep it from looking too planned out. And for the highest mountain, we'll do that last. So we're going to just do a low range first, and then we'll add the taller mountain in the middle. So from here, I'm just going to go up a bit. Remember, they're really wide. They're wider than they are tall. Travel over. Let's ignore the big mountain for now. Just come on over to this side. And then I'm going to come up and off the side. So I went a little higher over there. So that's what it should look like at first. Something like this. Remember, it's a gradual... Mountains build gradually. They're always way wider than they are tall. So we don't want the Egyptian pyramids in here. And now for the actual mountain that's kind of right through the middle of the canvas, what I have learned along the way for teaching is to make a low, rounded, what looks kind of, I call it like Loch Ness Monster's back poking out of the water. So it's a gradual build going up. We're not doing the triangular part yet at the top. It's just, think of it like a dinosaur back or Loch Ness Monster. So see, it's just kind of a gentle slope. Slope up and then back down. Now I'll add the pointed top. So to do that, I just go up. There we go. That's about how tall I want it to be. I ended up painting over a lot of my pink, but that's also in the original. And then back down. Now I could do a Mount Hood and I can make the extra little ridge there if I wanted to. But I don't have to. But I almost always will because I think it's just in my DNA. So now with a, let me speak right. With my big brush, I'll fill this all in down to the horizon line. And nobody will ever see these weird lines that I drew in to force myself to draw a decent mountain range. And as you fill it in, it'll look different. So you can take, and maybe you like how different it looks. Maybe you like it better than when it was drawn out. If you don't, you can always adjust bit by bit by using your same color and one of these two brushes we used. You even get out your small brush if needed. You're taking all my purple, Paul.
Then you didn't make enough for both of us.
I didn't. Well, you just have a huge mountain range. Actually, yours kind of looks like, is it Broken Top that looks like that?
Just generic Cascades Mountain.
Generic Cascades Mountain. That's exactly what these are.
Mine maybe looks a little bit more Jefferson-ish.
Could be. Yeah, maybe that's it. So don't worry too much about like your edge along here because we build all kinds of landforms around there. You won't even ever see that edge again. It's going to go by pretty quick. Let me mix up a little more of my color. I think I got maybe a little yellow in this.
That would just actually, with the purple, just kind of tone it down a little bit anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Fun little experiments here. And if you have the occasional bit of pink poking through because we're painting over the pink, that's a nice thing to have actually because we're going to actually add pink highlights back on the mountain later. So it's just kind of keeping with that color theme. I love the look of that with the silhouette against the sky. It looks really pretty. I like it. We're going to use this color for clouds too. So I know step 8 on the instructions, we go and we add color down here. But I say, well, we've already got this perfect shade mixed. Let's do the clouds now. And then we won't have to like stop and try to remix the shade and make it right. So this color is perfect for the clouds. If you do remix and it's slightly different, that is not a problem at all. Because they're not to match the mountains, they're just clouds. And basically there's no need to match the mountains. It's just the color I picked when I designed the painting. And clouds are, let me see, I need a piece of paper. You want to grab me one real quick? Because I don't, normally we have paper under our paintings that we draw on. But our roll of paper was out, so I had to grab a black plastic. Clouds took me a while to master, so don't feel like you have to have them absolutely perfect to start. The tips I will give, having less paint on your brush is awesome. That's going to help you so much. If you have a giant glob of paint and you start painting clouds on, you have to try to brush and brush and brush to figure out where you're going to put all that paint. So I just start with a little paint on the brush. And the clouds are, let me pull that original over here really quick. They're big and billowy, starts right up in the corner. Each of these edges here are kind of scalloped. And then they just kind of go out to these little pointy fingers and they're flat on the bottom. And that is really how most clouds look in the sky. You don't often see them where they're like really curvy on the bottom. A lot of times just because of that, probably the atmospheric pressure and all that, they end up flat on the bottom. And for painting, I think that's helpful. So let's test one out on this paper. I'll do one real quick. Let's pretend this is my canvas. And I start up in the corner and I just sort of build these curves. And then I'll just tap it out using the thin edge of my brush. Tap it out to where it's like this little straight little finger. And you can add another one even. Just make sure they're not the same, like you don't want them exactly the same length. And then I'm just gonna kind of brush back here. Maybe extend that out a little bit. And then all you do is, as you're filling them in, I just continue that sort of curved brush stroke. Just to give it the texture. And I'll get it all filled in this corner. Let's pretend I filled that in pretty solid. I didn't on the paper. It was sucking the paint up so much. And then I do another one on this side. And on this one, I maybe want the little fingery things to come over here. Like I like this. See, this starts lower. It's the same shape, just reversed. And then these little fingerling things are under these guys. So I'll just try to lay it out that way. Whoops. Here we go. And fill it in again.
We've got a canine visitor.
Yeah, dogs always want to come in and see what we're doing. So there are two very, very scratchy, simple clouds. I haven't filled them in. We add some highlights to the clouds later, so they look way better once that's all done. Let me grab my canvas back here, and now I think I need to remix some paint because I think I used all of it on the paper. So red, blue, probably a little more blue than red, just looking at that color, and some white. It's a gradual build here. Just something close to your mountain color. And because I mixed it with this big brush, I have giant globs of that paint all over the brush. And like I was telling you, I don't want to start with a huge amount of paint. So I'll swipe it off on my palette a bit, just kind of flatten that paint out just a bit. And I'm going to start way up here. Light pressure. Pretend you're just not committing to it. So you're using really light pressure. There we go. I'm going to dab that out there. And then this is just going to, I'm just sort of dotting it back here. And I'm going to add a second, you could add a second little, I just keep calling them fingers. That's kind of what they remind me of.
Tendril?
Tendril. Yeah, that's a good one. Maybe it's up here. And then when you fill these in, it's really good to just continue using those curved brush strokes because you'll see it in the texture of the paint. Go right up to the corner. They're pretty dark and ominous right now. You could use a clean number 8 brush and kind of come along the edges and make them a little more soft because clouds are definitely soft. So I just took a clean brush. I didn't add paint to it. And I just sort of just like wiping the paint outward into the sky just a bit, and you can do that with these little tendrils too. All right, cloud number 1 is, it's not done, but it's base painted on there. So cloud number 2 now it's got the same shape. It's a little steeper because it doesn't have a lot of room to get by this. It's going to come down, and then you don't have to put these on both. This could just be a big cloud that's kind of flat on the bottom. Just let it sort of plan itself out. So I'm going to come down maybe 2 inches from the top, 2 to 3 inches. Curve my little scallops. Here we go. So I've got that one loosely drawn on there. And I'm going to go ahead and fill that in with my curved brush strokes. If you want to see someone who paints amazing clouds, there's an artist I follow on Instagram. And I think he lives in New Mexico. And the reason I knew about him is because my sister-in-law bought several pieces of his art. And I always spend a lot of time looking at them when I'm at her house because I just love his style. So the name of this artist is William Hawkins. And I think his Instagram page is William Hawkins Art. And he does the most amazing skies and clouds. I absolutely love watching. He does those time-lapse videos so you can see, like, in 30 seconds, he does the whole painting with clouds and everything. They're amazing. So I highly recommend if you like to watch that sort of thing. It's kind of like Bob Ross Fast Tracked when it's done in the time-lapse. For those who don't have a lot of time to commit to watching long videos. Okay, so I do have a little light cloud tucked back here. It's totally optional. I did add it later after I added these two guys here. And it's just, I think we've mixed a little more white with the cloud color to make that, and it's lighter in color because it's supposed to be further away.
It looks to me like Bahama.
That's what I thought too. So let's see what the instructions say. Add more white for a smaller, paler cloud in the distant sky. So you could add white, but let's add Bahama blue. Is that what you're doing?
Yeah.
Okay, let's add Bahama blue. Now this cloud that's back here is 100% optional. It's not going to like change the painting so much that your painting is going to be lacking if you leave it off. It's just kind of one of those things where I went extra when I didn't really have to. So if clouds are not your thing and you had a lot of trouble with these guys, I'd say we'll just leave that one off. But if you felt like you did okay with these and you don't mind adding one more, we'll take this color. So Paul just added a little Bahama blue to our mix. That lightens it up just like the white would. I think we need a little more though, Paul.
You'd be surprised when she put it on there. Oh, you know what? But my sky right in there is a little darker than yours is, so that's why.
Oh, yeah. You want to make sure that it's a little darker than your sky. So I don't want it to be that exact color or it won't even show up. And here we go. I'm just going to do that same shape. Maybe I'll add a little more Bahama to it. As I first painted my first brush stroke on there, I saw it's not super. It was a little dark. Okay, so then I'm just going to do those curves, come out and back, meet up with this cloud, and fill it in. Little background peekaboo cloud. Totally unnecessary, but for whatever reason, while I was developing this painting, I was inspired to add one more.
I think just sometimes a painting that's just clouds and clouds and clouds, which we don't usually do in the studio, just because it is a challenging thing to paint.
Well, to teach on the stage when you're far away from the students. Like here you guys have the up close view zoomed in, and at the studio we can't do as in-depth of paintings. They're pretty, I mean a lot of them are pretty in-depth, but this works out really good for showing you guys up close and personal what to do.
Yeah, but what I was going to say though is it can be something very satisfying to just
oh yeah, I love painting clouds. That's how I wouldn't say I mastered it yet, but that's how I got a lot better.
I think it's like I've done it before too, where it's like normally we kind of have this rule of thirds of the canvas, where we do a horizon line either a third of the way from the bottom or a third of the way from the top, and sometimes it's really cool to just do a horizon line really close to the bottom, like maybe only less than a quarter of a way from the bottom or something like that, and just really fill the upper part with clouds and other interesting things.
One thing you guys could do with this color you made, it's optional. You could take and add a little of it to some of the outer edges of these with your little brush, not your tiny brush, but your number 8, your middle-sized brush. And what it ends up doing is it sort of breaks up the mass and just looks like this last little bits of sky, sunlight are kind of highlighting the edges here.
gotta be careful. I've got this area that's kind of wanting to just lift.
So basically, again, all I did is I took this color that I made with this little cloud back here. And with my number 8 brush, I'm just sort of adding it bit by bit, tiny bit of paint on the brush, super light pressure. Doing that curved brush stroke. Just add it to the outer edges of these cloud formations. Even like in here, you could do it. Doing those sort of things, what that does is, like if you look out at a cloudy sky, you oftentimes will see several different shades of white and gray and sometimes even black in there. And that's kind of what I've tried to create here. And it's a little hard to see. My paint's so glossy, but here, it's glossy because it hasn't dried yet, which I'll kind of tilt it around, you can kind of see. And this is where you could totally move this in a Van Gogh direction and do lots of little choppy brush strokes. For another day. For another day. Let's go ahead now and we'll go back to step 8, and that is where we're going to add the dark landmasses around here. And a lot of this gets covered up with black. I'm going to wash my number 8 brush and wash my biggest brush. We are going to use our biggest brush here for this part. Quit adding clouds, Paul.
Jeez. Take it easy.
He's added like a whole bunch more clouds. You guys will see his painting in the end. That's always really fun because he goes extra.
I love painting clouds too.
Yeah,
it's like
and you're good at it.
It's one of my favorite things to paint.
Happy little clouds. Okay, so we want to make a true dark green, and the best 2 colors on our palette for that are phthalo blue and yellow, and I have them right next to each other. So I'm going to just let them meet in the middle. I would say it's a little more phthalo blue than yellow. We want this kind of dark. Biggest brush. So you're getting, it's like a dark, dark teal color that it ends up making. And I am going to overlap this line. So remember I told you this line's going to go bye-bye. We're going to do that right now. Just come up maybe half an inch and just sort of eat into my river a little bit. I'm using the skinny edge of my brush along the sides of the river here. And you can just sort of blot this paint in. You want to cover up any pink outlines that you have. So if that means that you maybe use a smaller brush, like your middle size, and go back over and bring some little rock banks out here. That's what it takes. That's what we'll do. That is really bright. And that's probably why on the original I covered it with black, because I looked at it and thought, that's really bright. And I didn't completely cover it with black. We just do kind of a thin coat of black later that allows a little bit of the green to show through here and there. So on this left side, same thing. I'll come up maybe half an inch or so. Half an inch, quarter inch. Come down to the river. Using that horizontal skinny edge of my brush, I'm sort of poking into the river here. This is where you can reshape it. If you are going to reshape it at all, I would use your middle-sized brush. So for me, I felt like it's maybe too wide back here because it's like, to me it looks like these are the same width. And I don't want that. I want it to be quite a bit narrower back here. So I'm going to narrow that out just by bringing the grass and land in towards covering up some of the river. It's just a gradual process. Take your time. You can create little mounds of land here. It could be its own little rolling landscape. Let's see how you're doing, Paul. Yep, that's good. So this is kind of like, for those of you who have been part of GoBox for a while, this is a lot like our Harvest Moon painting where we had that same little stream thing going through. ways I've seen painters do this is paint the whole bottom green or whatever base color these are, and then zigzag the lake or river in there later. You've done some paintings like that way, I think, Paul.
Yeah. But I think it's always good, like, especially if it's kind of a first time you've done something like this. I think it's a great idea to do layouts, though.
Yeah.
I think that's something that I do a lot more when I'm painting my own, like, at-home paintings versus when I'm teaching in the studio.
Yeah.
So a lot of times trying to get 30 plus people to understand what you mean by where you're putting layout lines and stuff is a bit of a challenge, especially when they've had a glass of wine or two.
Yeah, you should do one for the Go Box that is done that style where you lay it out, like with like a raw sienna. Is that what you're talking about? Like where you kind of sketch it out, like you did with that oil one you were working on.
I was gonna.
That's up there in the stack.
That's actually going to be my first art adventure painting since it's the anniversary of that trip.
What trip was that?
Maui.
Oh, oh, it was Maui painting. For some reason I thought it was an Oregon landscape. I couldn't remember what it looked like. I just remember it was laid out in the sort of sepia tone. Alright, so I'm just cleaning up and gradually playing around with the shape of my river here.
I think one thing that's really helpful when you're making these brush strokes to clean things up, to change your shapes and stuff like that, is to keep the brush where it's interacting with the water pretty much moving horizontally.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is water, when it interacts with land, is always interacting in a horizontal manner unless it's a waterfall.
Yeah.
So if we use horizontal brush strokes, it's going to make more sense visually to the person who's looking at it than if we're doing vertical brush strokes or even diagonal brush strokes.
Yeah. And later on, we add some white, like river ripples that will help encourage that. Like if you have where you maybe have some curved brush strokes for your filled in river, this will help in the end when we come back in and we add some little white ripples through there. One thing I noticed that I don't even know if it's on the instruction, I see it on the original. I thought I need to clean up back in here because where my mountain meets the river is kind of ugly. And one thing I see on the original is there's a tiny bit of a shadow from the mountain added into the river, but I don't want to do that now because we will end up with smeared green in there. So we'll do that a little bit later. All right, we're on the back page. Woohoo! Step 10. Okay, we're going to highlight the mountain. So for highlighting the mountain, this is one of several Go Box mountain paintings we've done. And if you're new to us, you're going to learn a little bit today about how we do it. So if you've ever watched Bob Ross paint mountains, he uses a palette knife. So he starts like this, where he's got this solid silhouette shape, and then he takes his palette knife and just scrapes down one side with white usually, because he usually does a lot of snowy mountains. And suddenly it's like, whoa, that object went from flat to three-dimensional. So let's clean our biggest brush and dry it off. And we are going to use the thin edge of the brush. That's what we're going to use as our palette knife. We're just going to scrape paint down the left side of the mountain here, and then, like, of course, the left side of this mountain and the left side of this mountain. So our sun later on is going to end up right about here. So it's going to highlight these edges. So let's go ahead and make a pink, unless you have a little left. I've got a little left from earlier. I don't want a lot. The highlight's kind of subtle. I just will take and I'll dip the brush edge of it in a little pink. And I don't want a lot on there, so I'll just kind of spread it around with my finger. And I'll start at the top of the mountain here, and I'm just going to scrape down. Let the brush run out of paint, because what that's going to do is going to create those little rocky areas that you always see on mountains, that where you suddenly go from snow to rocks. So letting your brush run out of paint is good. So you should have gaps of purple background and gaps of pink highlight. You can use a smaller brush, like your middle-sized one. You can kind of spread things around if needed.
I think I like to do it that way a lot, but the trick to it is you have to have restraint.
And use very little paint, yeah. Yeah,
well, I mean, like, you have to resist that urge to just paint.
Yeah.
You still need to...
You have to force yourself to stop.
Yeah, exactly.
And what I usually do is I'll even wipe my brush off and just sort of let the brush run out of paint down in here. Because this part down in here is not going to be in the highlight zone as much as what it is up in here. So for these smaller guys, I'm going to use my number 8 brush. And you can even like bring this down further to make this part look like it's another mountain that's just coming down and crisscrossing this one. It's kind of fun. And it's one of those things you stand back and it looks really good, but up close you just see all these like little messy spots and oh, there's not enough paint there. Oh, I can see weird canvas texture there. Stand back from it. I mean, paintings are meant to be viewed at a distance. They look so much better. Like for me, up close, it doesn't look so great, but I can see it up on the monitor and I think, wow, I did a really good job with that. So that's something to always think about. Over here kind of gets covered up by trees, but I will put a little pink like down here because this is where, based on where the sun's going to be located, this is going to be the highlight zone. There we go. I used very little paint on my brush while I did that. In fact, you can even poke your brush onto the big one. Maybe I'll do a little highlight there since I added this little ridge. Mountains and clouds in one painting. That's tough work, but it's really rewarding and you learn a lot. Every time that you do one of these, you learn more and more tricks. Oh, while I've got the pink on my brush, I don't want to use the big brush. I want to use my number 8. I'm going to take and add a little pink to the bottom of the clouds. So I don't want a lot because it's a highlight on the bottom of the clouds. So we don't need a lot because if you have a lot, then suddenly you're going to end up with brushing it way up here because you're going to try to figure out what to do with all that paint on your brush. So dip it in the pink, wipe it off on your palette or your towel, and let's just scrape a little in here. Right along the bottom and along the bottom of the little fingery parts. You can come up a little higher. So what this is it's the highlight from the last little sunset here. And I'll get a little on this cloud too. Always start with a little paint and gradually add more. And you can add a little to this guy too if you want. Just a touch. There we go. Looks good. Okay, I'm gonna wash the brush. We're looking good. Getting there. We have the base stuff laid out, and now we're gonna start working on adding all the little things that make it nice and detailed. We want to put stars up in the sky. So my technique for stars is to use the handle end of the littlest brush, although you can use the tip of the bristles if you want. It's real easy to use the handle like a rubber stamp. And I dip it in the white paint, and then I poke it a few times on my palette so I don't end up with like supernovas right off the bat. And then up in here where it's really dark, don't go over your clouds, just kind of up in this upper corner. go ahead and dot in as many stars as you want. The night sky is up in here, and the sunset's down in here. So as you get down into the lighter parts of the sky, you would definitely have less stars that are visible. But you can do one or two peekaboo. You know, there's always those first stars coming out, what you see. Try not to make them a pattern, so it's real easy and super common to make each one like equal distance apart. But what I have done over the years to keep myself from doing that is just cluster little patterns of stars together and then move aside to somewhere else, do the same thing. There we go.
Scritch, scritch, scritch.
Yes, you are making a lot of noise over there. So there's my stars in the upper sky. I think this ring light, Paul, is making a weird glare on the canvas. I noticed this.
Yeah, it does seem to be doing that tonight.
I could adjust it, but then I might throw things out of whack.
You turn the power down on it.
Okay.
It's one of the
there it is.
one of the triangle buttons on it.
There. That actually looks a little better.
Picks up the color a
maybe
little bit.
one more. No, that made a big difference. Okay. There. Now we can see it a little bit better without the bright glare from the ring light on there. Okay. So we've got some stuff done. Now we're going to do more stuff. We are going to paint the sun on there. It's right back here, kind of floating over this gap here, this little canyon where the two mountains meet. And it is done with a mixture of white and yellow, and I actually finger painted it on there. If you don't like to get your fingers dirty, you don't have to do that. You can use a brush. But I'm going to mix the paint color with my number 8 brush, so make sure it's clean. And it's 2 parts white to 1 part yellow. Thereabouts, kind of, sort of. Just, you make a really pale yellow, kind of like lemon yogurt is what it ends up looking like. And then to finger paint, literally, you can just put paint on your finger from your brush or just dip your finger right in that you mixed. And it's about the size of a 50-cent piece on the original. It's a little bit bigger than a quarter, not quite as big as a silver dollar, although if you made it that big, it's not a biggie. Then maybe I'll use one of my dry fingers to go around the edges to sort of just haze the edges around. And you can always use your paintbrush if you feel like, oh, I scraped too much paint off there, or you need to clean up edges or anything like that. I'll usually do a combination of both. I do like the softness that finger painting gives it. And on screen, mine looks almost white, but it's got a little yellow touch to it. So let's pull this guy back over here. You can see that I've got my sun, and our sun is that's our big light bulb, our light source. So it's also going to cast that yellowish white light on the mountain a little bit. The mountain's closest to it. So I've already got that on my brush, but I have too much on my brush. If I were to add that in right now, I would have way too much paint to work with. So I'm going to wipe it off on my towel. So I still have the color on there, but not much. You'll be amazed at how much comes out of your brush. And I'll just scrape on some bits of this color that's in your sun on the mountain. I'm wiggling my brush around a lot, but I just kind of following the slope of the mountain. And then I'll do that over here too, especially right under where the sun is. Nice and bright. Wiggle that brush around a lot. Let it run out of paint as you get down in here. You can always go back and paint more plummy purple up in there if you feel like you've got too much. Or you can sometimes take a damp, clean brush, like I just washed mine, and just sort of feather out the edges if you feel like you ended up with too much paint on the brush and you need to soften things up. A damp, clean brush will do wonders. And right here, set up a tent there, make a little fire, toast some marshmallows. Getting there for sure. I do want to add some of that light yellow up in here because that, especially right here, the sun is going to cast that light up here and a little over here. Maybe not so much over here, but whatever's closest to the sun. So I have my brush, I cleaned it, and I'm going to dip it right back into some of that white and yellow mix and just add little hints of that under here and under here. Not a lot. Every time you can add a color on these clouds, it looks really good. Maybe a little here. One thing you could even do, we have so much color going on down in here, you could make this sort of orangey color, which was the pink. It was the white, red, which makes pink, and then you added a little bit of yellow. And that could be added up in here too. Maybe I'll do that real quick. White, red, and yellow to make that sort of coral color. You can add that up in the clouds. Just make sure you don't have a ton of paint on your brush. Everything can be covered up. So if you went too far and you really don't like it, mix some of this purple color again and gradually add it back in with your little brush. You don't need to like cover up everything and start over. You can always just gradually cover some things and soften things up. I do that a lot if I have to, which I do occasionally have to.
We all do.
We all do. Yep, we do.
Sometimes you think a color's going to look great and it just doesn't work.
That's right. So I am going to now that this green is dry, I'm going to add a little bit of this purpley shade down into the water just to indicate that the mountain it's casting a shadow onto the water, which it would do. Your light source is behind the mountain, so it's going to make that shadow come down here. And you don't need much color at all. It's the same color that you used in your clouds and your mountain, which was red, blue, and white. Brush-wise, I'm going to use my number 8. I don't have any of that color remaining, so I need to mix it. Come up with something that's kind of close. Yeah, that looks good. Very little paint, so let's wipe it off. And just dry brush back and forth. Now I took way too little paint on my brush. And just shade into the water. I'm not making it, solid purple. I have lots of pink showing through there too. Feel free to paint onto the green a bit too, because we're going to add black in there. Give add a little water to your paint too, which will help for shading.
Something to keep in mind is that when something's being reflected into water, it's not going to mimic the color exactly.
Yeah.
So if your color is a little bit off...
Let me hold this up because it's really hard to see.
It's not going to hurt it at all.
It looks really subtle on the camera, but it's quite a bit darker in person. All right, guys, we are getting there. I wanted to do this one first because it's a little more detailed, and I would say maybe a little more of a challenge. Tropical Getaway next week is super easy and really fun.
Mm-hmm.
This is fun too. It just requires a little, it's a lot of little steps to it. So we are going to, so we already added pink to the clouds and yellow. We're going to do a distant tree line. So there's a distant tree line back here. It is a true grape color, so there's no white added to this color. And so that's just your dark blue, your phthalo blue, and red mixed together. So why don't you go ahead and mix us some of that, Paul, with the number 8 brush. And this is where we do what we've done before, where I call it a sound wave pattern. It's a way to indicate a forest without having to paint tons of individual these kind of trees. You're basically, you're taking your brush and you're wiggling it up and down as you go across, kind of like you're making a heart rate monitor. And that's what we're going to do. Make sure that you leave your gap on either side of the river. Did you make our color? Awesome. Okay, so let's take that. Let me show you on paper first. So you're going to hold your brush so you're using the vertical edge so you get a nice skinny line. That wasn't very good. You can mix a drop of water with your paint. Sometimes that's helpful. Make it a little more fluid. Basically, you're going to wiggle your brush up and down as you move horizontally across the canvas. I'm not lifting my brush at all. I don't worry about the bottom because we'll go back and we'll just kind of clean that up. But for now, just worry about the top edge. Make a varied height forest. So see how it ends up resembling like a heart rate? Then once you've gone across, you can go back and fill in these little gaps with a little paint. So let's go ahead and do that. A drop of water with your paint is awesome, works great. You didn't make me enough paint, Paul. You made a different mix over there. You made yours lighter?
I just, for this back row,
here we go.
That goes across to the left, I'm just making it just a touch lighter. It's still darker than the mountain, but I wanted to make it just a little lighter than the next row that's going to be a little bit closer.
Again, don't worry about here where it's kind of like floating above the landscape there. Like you can see, I've got gaps where you can see the lighter purple base of the mountain showing through. I'm going to clean that up. But for now, we're just worrying about the top edge. So now I can go in, now that I've gone all the way across, I can go in and clean up down in here.
How do you clean that up?
I'm just brushing paint in. And I'm not too worried about overlapping into the green because we're going to paint black over this anyway. So there, now it just looks like a forest that's sort of meeting the edge of the green there. This could be a golf course. Now the other side. There we go. You can start anywhere you like on the other side of the river. This technique works really good if you're doing like castle ruins too. I did a painting once where I did that. It's like castle ruins in a distance.
I think the thing that's really good about this technique is once you learn to embrace it for what it ends up looking like, you start to realize that painting isn't always about exactly recreating everything perfectly.
Yep.
It's just giving a suggestion
To your viewer's eyes.
Of what there is.
So there you can see my gap where you see the light purple base of the mountain showing through, and then there's the grass. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to bring that paint down so it meets the grass in sort of an imperfect way. There we go. All right. Now we are going to dab some black, a thin coat of black over these green patches. And again, I know I did that because I felt like the green was really like in your face and it needed a darker foreground especially. So I'm going to take my biggest brush and clean it off. And I'll dip it in a little bit of black. I just want to start with a little And starting back here with where we worked on the woods, come over the green, dab it on there, but occasionally do leave a little bit of green showing through. There, I'll tilt it. It's kind of hard to see on this one side because of that stupid glare. Maybe on this side will be better. I'll do the same thing over here. So I'm using such a small amount of paint so that you do see green showing through, but it just darkens everything up in a nice way. Maybe you leave some gaps where there's just green. So here, I'll hold it up. You can see this side is a little bit better. We're going to just bring that on down to the bottom on both sides. A little at a time. Along the water's edge, it can be a lot of green if you want. What are you doing over there?
I'm just doing what you just said.
It's weird. From my angle, it looks like it's purple. It is purple, isn't it?
It's a little bit of purple.
I knew it.
I will bring the black in too, though.
So we're hearing a lot of scrapey noises, and what that means is we are, for the most part, dry brushing. We're not using a lot of paint on the brush. Although just as I said that, I ended up with a lot of paint on the brush. But I kind of like that. What this did is it added some cool contrast in here where I kind of hit it with a little extra black paint. So it looks like maybe there's a green field just beyond these rocks that I'm painting in, or whatever these things are.
So one thing we can do on this too, we can call it Paul's kick-up tip.
Paul's kick-up tip.
I guess, I don't know. But when we kind of get all this in, we can take even just a little tiny bit of, I'm going to point on your canvas real quick.
Okay.
If we got the sun kind of shining through here, we can take a little bit of just the bright yellow and just kind of hit some little dabs along the edges of the green.
Sure. You can do that. We add a little orange in there later, but you can absolutely add some yellow too. Are you thinking about doing that right now, did you say? Or?
No, I'm just saying later.
Later, okay.
Because what that'll do is it'll really give the idea that there's a little bit of sunlight just kicking through there and creating a little highlight, and the yellow is going to enhance the idea that it's green.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I do feel like this looks way better now, having it without that really garish green.
It was pretty garish.
It was really bright, yeah. But I've left green patches showing through, so it's definitely like someone looking at it would be like, oh yeah, green fields and rocks and whatnot. We're going to now paint trees, and then we'll do some highlights, and then we will add some ripples in the water, and we'll be done. So there's not a whole lot of steps left. We are on the other side of the slope. And on the original, what I did here is I added 2 light trees behind these 2 black trees. So these are lavender. They're a little bit lighter than the mountain. So it's like we take the mountain color and add white to it. And so they're further away, so they're just a bit lighter. And then these ones are more in the foreground, so they're nice and dark, and they just sort of overlap those others. So let's go ahead and take our number 8 brush, so your middle size. If you already have your mountain base color, you can just add white to it. I need to mix some more. You can see our palette is getting glorious here. So that was, let's find a spot. Red and blue to make a dark grape soda purple. And then quite a lot of white here to turn it lavender. So you want it lighter than your mountain. So what you can do, it's pretty light. It's like a light pastel lavender. What you can do is hold your brush up to your mountain. And I feel like mine's too close to the mountain color, so I need to add more white. There. Now it's light. It feels like it's the right color. So lavender, true lavender. From mixing, you have a lot of paint on your brush. Go ahead and swipe that off somewhere. And then I'll show you trees. We'll start with these ones in the back because they can very easily be covered up. So they're less important than the black ones in the front. And to paint a fir tree, let's say this is my ground. I plant the tree trunk first, and then I determine how tall I want it to be. Then at the top, I use the corner of the brush, and I do a few little dabs to make the furry stem that sticks straight up on a fir tree. Or it's really hard to find them straight, actually, when you're getting Christmas trees. Then I'm going to turn the brush, so I'm using it horizontally, and I dab out a short little mustache. So that looks like a arrow pointing up. And then every time I add a tree bough, it's a mustache. And I dab it. I'm lifting and tapping the brush. So what that does is it gives it the impression of it's a really furry fir tree. It's got a lot of texture going on. So lifting and tapping. Every time you add a little mustache here, it's a little wider than the one above it. And on these, I think I left some tree trunk showing. You can come about 3/4 of the way down, or you can come all the way to the ground if you want. But that is your basic tapped out little fir tree. So we're going to plant 2 of those, and I'll show you where. They are about the same spot across the river. Here's what I'll do. I'm going to come in. Let's find the level. So the base of these purple back trees is right about here. I'm going to come in from the canvas about 1.5 inches, and right along that tree line, make a dot. That's where the tree trunk's going to grow out of the ground. And then over here, let's kind of figure out the same sort of thing. So find your tree line. Come in about 1.5 inches, and this time I'm going to drop down a little more. Right about there. Boom. And now I set the height. Some people like to go from the sky down, and some people like to go from the ground up. I find myself most often going from the ground up. Parallel the side of the canvas, that way you can get it kind of straight. It's going to go up taller than the mountain on mine.
I think that's kind of an important tip.
What's that?
Going taller than the mountain.
Yeah. Yeah, because it kind of gives that look. It gives it that look that the mountain is further away. And bummer, this one's going to go right across my sun, but it kind of does in the original too. This one could go over the cloud, or it could just come below the cloud. I think today I'm going to have it just end right below the cloud. So there we go. Kind of hard to see with the lighting. Very similar color to the background here especially. And then at the top, dab, dab, dab on both of these. Use the corner of your brush and do a few little dabs to make it look like it's got that spike at the top where you put your Christmas tree star. I'll do this one first because it's more visible on the camera, I can see. So I'll do the little mustache. It's real short. Not very wide. Then another. And another. Lifting and tapping the brush. These are not super important trees, so don't worry about making the quote-unquote perfect tree. Promise you the perfect tree does not exist. They're very hard to find in nature. If you have a lot of gaps and your tree resembles what we call a fishbone tree means there's a lot of equal gaps, so it's kind of like, let me draw one real quick. I see this a lot in the studio where you've got the tree trunk, then they do the triangle top, and each of these is equal distance apart. So in the end, it really looks like a fishbone. And I've had people paint those on their canvas and they think it's just wrecked, just ruined, and they, there's no redeeming, no fixing it. And I'll come through and show them how, okay, we need to make a pointy top, And then we just are going to add more tree boughs. And I'll, like, a lot of times just blot right over the top of those original ones they did. And fix it in like 30 seconds. So they are very fixable. You don't see it now. It was a fishbone, and now it looks like this tree. So keep that in mind. If you end up with the fishbone tree, it's easy to fix. Now I'm going to go ahead and rip out this one here too. So I do the little mustache at the top. I'm just going to keep zigzagging across. Fill in any gaps, like, you know, if you have to go back to your other one, or as you work along, you notice, oh, I've got too many gaps. You really don't see the tree trunks. You'll see the occasional little peekaboo view of the tree trunk with these, and you'll see the base, obviously, if the foliage doesn't go all the way to the ground. But the foliage grows pretty thickly around the tree trunks. So you don't have to have that stick that you painted showing. Yeah, the lighting here, Paul, we'll have to play around with that next time because it's really super light over here. Like, look up there and look at it in person.
Mm-hmm. I think it could be because we have the black background.
That could be. Next time we'll have to pick up a roll of paper, butcher paper. Okay, so now we're going to paint the black trees in front of those. I know, it's scary, but these were our practice trees. Maybe I did that on purpose to get those out of the way. And you can see there are little peekaboo views of these lavender trees showing through. And again, it's just this ring light is kind of washing the color out, but in person it's more like what's on your paper. These are black, and I didn't use a lot of paint. If you wanted to make, like, you could take your teal that we made, that garish teal that we used earlier, and mix some black with it. So then you end up with a little bit of a greenish cast to it. And I'm going to do that, actually. I like that idea. So it turns into more of an army green. It could pass as black, but it's just kind of a greenish. And I'm going to add a drop of water. So that turned it kind of more of an army green. And I'm going to go ahead and plant these trees. Let's see how tall they are. This one starts pretty much right next to the lavender one, but it goes quite a bit taller, way up over the cloud. Almost, it's like within 2 inches from the top of the canvas. And it just parallels the side of the canvas. It's only about 1/2 inch away when I draw that tree trunk on there, and I'll guide you through that. Same with this one. It doesn't go quite as tall. I never make equal sized trees on either side because I hate that look. It looks way too planned out. But let's go ahead and do it. You can do it! We're going to do it right now. Don't be scared. We'll just go step by step. Let's plant the base of the trunk. So it's going to go, maybe move in about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch from the right side of your canvas over towards this purple tree. Make a dot, something you can see. I can't really see it on mine. Let's make a dot how tall we want it to go. So just sort of eyeball it right up to about there, within 2 inches to the top of the canvas is it's a good height to go with, but you could go shorter if you want to, if you're a little scared to go that tall. And then I'm just going to connect the dots. Whether you go from the ground up or the sky down does not matter. And you can see mine's wiggly and it's not perfect. I'll set the tree trunk on this side before we start adding foliage. So this one again is about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch inward from the edge of the canvas, right about in line with this guy. So I'll put a dot there. Height-wise, I don't want them to be the same, so this one just needs to be a little lower. I do go over the cloud. Make a dot. And connect the dots. Parallel the edge of your canvas, just that'll help kind of keep it straighter. But it doesn't have to be perfectly straight. Mine definitely won't be. At the top, use the corner of your brush and make those little dabs for the spike that sticks straight up on each of these. Turn your brush and use it horizontally. Give this a little tiny mustache on each side. Dab, 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 dab. So right now they kind of look like really weird tall crosses. strange.
I think something that's kind of, as I'm starting to paint this and I'm getting into where I'm overlapping things that I've already painted, I think it's important to point out that a lot of times when we're first learning how to paint, our instinct is to try to avoid painting over something else we've already painted.
Right. Because you're like, I already worked on that.
Yeah, and sometimes it's like, okay, if it's a focal point, like maybe the mountain or the sun or something like that, that's really... I'm
going to continue on while you're talking.
Yep, what's really important part of the painting, then yeah, sure, you want to make sure you at least leave it so it makes sense. But when you're out on these peripheral edges, I mean, this tree really is what they call an eye stopper, meaning it's designed in the darkness and the shape of it's designed to keep your eye focused on the center of the canvas instead of wandering off the edge of the canvas. So if it's overlapping all these other little background elements and stuff, I mean, that's just the way painting works.
Yeah. And when you start getting into where you're designing paintings, that's something that's really funny that, like he's saying, the eye stopper, that's something that after you've looked at a lot of different art, pictures, paintings, whatnot, photographs even, and after you've maybe done some replicas of master paintings, like try and do a Van Gogh or, copy that. It's something that comes naturally and you don't even realize you're doing it. It's just because your brain goes, oh, this is how it needs to look. It needs to have this to balance that. And so it takes a while of painting for sure, but it does come.
Yeah, and it's just designed to help focus the eye back towards the middle of the canvas.
I am a little bummed because I liked this lavender tree here and it's really getting covered up. Oh well. I could put one right here. I noticed Paul put more than one lavender tree on his.
It felt a little lonely on that side.
I think I might put another one on there because mine got completely obliterated. So I will show how to do that if you had the same problem.
Actually, my problem was that I wasn't really happy with the way my son looked, so I decided to just put a tree kind of kicking into it.
Looking at my original, the trees on there, I did them kind of sloppy, I noticed. Maybe on purpose. Who knows? It's kind of when you're in the zone. Okay, so that one's done. It's very tall and narrow. I could make it a little wider. I think I was being careful because I was doing the same thing Paul was just talking about. I didn't want to cover up my pretty lavender tree.
You get up into the mountains though, and trees are pretty tall and narrow.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to like...
Why is that?
I really don't know the answer to that.
What? You're the human encyclopedia.
I'm guessing it has something to do with the elevation, but...
Could be. Well, and then you get like up in where it's the timberline and the trees get smaller and smaller. It might even have something to do with
but
that.
The farther up you think about it, you go up to Timberline Lodge, you don't see moundy types of trees like you would see closer to... Like you go down to the coast, for example, and you see these... Even though they're windswept, they're very low to the ground and broad versus tall and skinny. And I bet it has something to do with maximizing their efficiency of catching sun rays.
Probably. They know what to do. We don't need to show them. Speaking of Timberline Lodge, what was that? What's the name of that show we were watching where it was like talking about movies?
Cinema Sins.
Cinema Sins. What channel is that on?
It's on YouTube.
Oh, it's on YouTube. So we were watching that Cinema Sins yesterday, which is really funny. The guy, whoever makes it and writes it,
he's pretty funny.
They take movies and they do like a fast 18-minute like lowdown on the movie, and he scores them points for certain sins that have happen in the movie.
He gives them a mark for a cliche or stealing something from another movie or just doing something that's just silly. Yeah,
so anyway, they were doing The Shining yesterday, and most of you guys who have watched that know it's filmed at Timberline Lodge. The outside scenes are. And there's this aerial scene where, they've obviously filmed it from a helicopter or something, and you see Timberline Lodge, and it's kind of going around it, and you don't see, there's no maze, there's no hedge maze, and that's the one thing he scored as that's a cinema sin, because where's the maze that he gets trapped in the end, it's very obviously not there, but later on in the movie it's just right outside the door of the hotel, so that was pretty funny. Okay, so I have a little lavender left, and since I blotted out my pretty tree there, I'm going to go ahead and add another one just anywhere in here, any height. I'll do it shorter than the mountain. It feels like that's what I should do. And I noticed one thing Paul does, he kind of grounds his trees where he'll take and, like he brought the foliage all the way to the bottom, and then you'll take, sort of just let your brush run out of panes, kind of fog out the bottom.
I do that.
Yep, I do like that look. I'm going to do that over here.
You know why I do that?
Because it looks weird to have it just growing right there on
Yeah, I feel like if trees, it kind of helps resolve them by hiding what's going on.
Yeah. And you can treat it like, a lot of times, like a shadow or a reflection. On yours, it just kind of looks like fog, maybe. Like you've put in some purple highlights through here. So speaking of highlights, that is our last step. And let me pull the original over so I can point out what we do. And we'll show how to put some yellow in there like Paul was talking about. That's not on the original.
You know what, I'm putting it on.
It's not the last step. We do some white ripples in the water.
But it doesn't, I'm not thinking it adds anything.
So, I used orange, and we made that by, you had your bubblegum or raspberry smoothie pink, that color, that we first started the painting out with, and then you add yellow to it. And I just sort of imagine there's little rocks and things that the sunset is going to cast some light on. So we'll go ahead and do that. Number 8 brush.
Maybe the reason I'm not liking this, maybe it's too stark of a yellow.
Could be. Sometimes in your paintings you get the acid green. Remember Dave Selleck, our instructor at college, used to talk about the acid green. Be careful about that acid green.
No, but I think this toned down color makes more sense.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to take my pink. I've got I think I need to make a little more, make a cleaner batch. Oops, got a little purple in there, not a biggie. And let's add some yellow. All we're looking for is a orangey color. Not straight up orange, just orangey. You might call this coral.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be a little dirty because your water's dirty, and like on mine I got a tiny bit of purple mixed into it. But that's okay. It's a highlight color on the ground. It can be a little dirty. But the most important thing, when you mix color, we don't want a lot of paint on our brush. We want to dry brush all these highlights in because we want them to be kind of subtle. So I have a glob of paint on this brush from mixing it, and you can kind of see it there as I lift it up. Lots of paint. I want to wipe it off. Probably on my towel. So your brush will look like it has no paint on it. And this is where I'll show you there is paint on it. So I'll brush in a few highlights along the river. I really like to add them in there. And now I have run out of paint, so I'll add just a bit more. You can create your own rocks and landscapes by just doing a little curved brush stroke. So like the sunlight is maybe catching the top of a rock here, and you're not seeing the bottom side, you're just seeing the top edge that's highlighted. Kind of like how we highlighted the mountain, actually. Very similar. I didn't actually put a ton of highlights. Let me pull that over here. You can see there's just a few kind of along the river, and then I stopped. I didn't put any more. Little things you could do through here, if you have a big space, you could add tiny little wildflowers in there. Maybe pink or purple or yellow would be really pretty. Little buttercups. That's an idea. If you wanted to continue to work on the painting, you don't have to do it tonight. A lot of times I will take paintings that have sat in my studio for ages, and I'll go back and add things to them.
We've done that. We've got a couple on the shelf right now that are a couple years old that were...
Yes. It was Da Vinci who said, artwork is never finished, only abandoned. Well, you can unabandon it anytime. You can go back to it anytime. So there I've got some coral colored highlights throughout. If you overdo it, remember you can just wash your brush, take a little bit of black, or if you have that blacky green color we made the trees with. Oops, that didn't work. And go back and like soften any out. Just dab some of that dark color in there. Just soften it nice. If you want to add the yellow, like the color from the sun, which my son really got stuffed back there behind a tree, you would use your same technique, and the color was the yellow and white mix, 2 parts white, 1 part yellow. Wipe that brush off so you have very little, and then just, like you could put some on the trees. Oh yeah, I like that. That adds a nice sparkle, even on these trees here. Painter's glitter, I would call that. Very nice. Not a lot, just a little at a time.
This little bit of yellow technique.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to credit Jerry Yarnell for that.
Okay. He's a TV painter like Bob Ross.
I don't know if he's still on, but he's got quite the following. And what it's all about, it's about putting a little bit of something in the mid-ground to look at.
Mm-hmm.
That balances the other colors. And again, it draws the eye back to the middle of the canvas.
Sure.
So I'm done with mine.
Okay, well I'm going to add the ripples of white in the water, and then we'll be done.
We do have that, don't
we? So that's with your little brush. Really, this is the only time outside of doing the stars in the sky, and then when we sign the paintings, this is the only time we use the little brush. So this little brush was neglected tonight. And let's see if I can get this to show up more. Oh gosh, that light is really bad. I'm sorry, you guys. Hopefully you have your paper to look at. But honestly, all I'm doing is taking the little brush and a little bit of white on the very tip of the bristles. Tiny bit, just a little speck. And I'll start way back here, especially along the, along where the water meets the land. I'm using horizontal brush strokes. I'm almost like kind of scribbling, but in a horizontal manner. And what these are these are the little ripples where there's rocks and landforms for the water to have to trail around. If you've ever done any kayaking, you kind of know what this is. It can still, you can still kind of have that calm feel. You don't have to do like...
You don't have to do rapids.
Like boxcar, what do they call it, level 4 rapid, I can't even remember. Just
something like that.
Nice little gentle ripples. And then I'm done. Let's see how this looks. I adjust.
I'd almost say just turn that off for a second.
Let's see if it works. Yeah, we didn't need it. We didn't need it. Sorry. Kind of see it.
It is a very subtle part of the painting, so it's going to be hard to see.
Yeah, and the lighting, I think you're right. I think it's probably the... Oh, we don't have these on.
We never do.
Oh, we don't? Okay. Maybe it's just the black background kind of making everything funky.
It does.
But that is your painting, and you do want to sign it in whatever color suits your fancy. I'll show you real quick how to do those little yellow buttercups. A lot of times just do little clusters of dots. You wouldn't necessarily see individual flowers from this distance. You just see little clusters of little yellow dots. And I could continue that and add more and more. There's a little field of them. But I am going to sign my painting so I don't keep you guys waiting. And we'll show you Paul's. I'll just take yellow and do my little autograph down here. Sloppy autograph. And let's do this. Let's show Paul's next to mine. Let's see, maybe I should turn this light back on. Didn't really do much having it off. Okay. Wow. Okay, yours looks so much better in person.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, is like this area of yellow right in here. It looks a little sloppy on the camera, but I think it when you see it in person, it makes.
And your river is so pretty. It's like nice and long and kind of wagon wheels around there. Let's see what we can do, Paul. No. I
could try turning the overhead lights on.
Yeah, try that and see what happens. So let's see what Paul has done different. He highlighted his mountain a little bit different, a little stronger highlight, I would say. Yeah, that didn't work.
That made it worse.
Maybe it's that one. So he gave it a little stronger highlight. Here, wait. Hold that thought.
Fun with lights.
Yeah, you should turn that back on, I think. A little stronger highlight through the mountain. Cloud-wise, you added a lot of little like hazy clouds that are sort of dissipating way back in the distance. And then, yeah, your river has a nice
Actually,
long
if you look at on the computer versus the TV screen.
Oh, maybe it's our TV screen.
I think it's our TV screen.
And you have quite a few more lavender trees. I do like that a lot.
I only did 3.
Mm.
But, yeah, that was fun.
Yeah.
I like that one.
Really good. So, we'll see you next week on the 20th at 7:30, same time. Let me grab the Hawaiian Horizon painting. Or not Hawaiian Horizon. This one is called Tropical Getaway. Here we go. Let's move these guys out of the way. So this is what we'll be doing next week, and it's quite a bit easier, less steps involved. Similar color pattern, similar with the sky, but we get to travel to the beach. We're going to go from the mountains, hood to coast.
Yeah, there you go. And if you're just seeing us for the first time, make sure you click on the... I'm going to go back to our regular view here. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Ready, smile? Hi! Anyway, if you're just catching us for the first time, you're just stumbled across and saw our video, and you're wondering what we're doing, click subscribe. We're going to do, we do 2 live videos a month, and if you're interested in getting the materials to do the projects along with us, we do have a subscription box available through gobox.com. It's goghbox.com. And there's a couple different options. You can, if you see some of the videos that we already have uploaded, we have all those available to purchase one at a time. And outside of that, what else?
Outside of that, make sure you're spending some time, taking some time for yourself. And
yeah, that's what this is all about.
That's what this is all about. Hey, ours almost makes a date night painting.
It almost does.
Yeah, so make sure that you are, taking that time to unwind for yourself. And that's exactly what this is. There's stressful parts of the painting for sure, but overall the process in the end is very de-stressing. And
absolutely.
I hope that you guys, can start experiencing that some. And next month, we have Valentine's Day coming up, so we're doing a double canvas painting.
Woo-hoo.
Which, it's something you can do on your own. You can paint the whole thing yourself. Or have a partner, whether it's your child or your grandpa or your spouse or boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. And it's kind of a fun group project. We do those in the studio too, the date night projects. But we're going to stop talking now and let you guys get finished up. If you have any questions, please let us know. You can do chat on our website on either vinego.com or gobox.com. There's a chat feature. And it's usually Paul and I answering those questions. So feel free to send anything our way. And other than that, have a great night. Great rest of your week.
All right. Peace out.
Peace out. Thanks a lot, guys.
All right.